Good evening, Moses and Innocent. Don't know if you guys can even hear me now. Evening, Innocent.
Good evening. Yes, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, and how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. I think we'll just wait for 5 more minutes, then we start the meeting so at least we can finish early. It's very brief. It's a brief meeting. Yeah, but I feel like the earlier we finish, the better.
All right.
And by the way, I have actually good news. By the way, but looking at how we are progressing, by the first week of January, we'll be done with the lectures. That means early March, we'll be graduating. Like early March, because January we'll focus on the live chats, which will be panels of youth discussions. We'll be grouping you in groups of 3. And then February, or if you are free, you can even start January. But January, you have to submit an outline. We'll send you, it's an action plan where you write about the outreach, where you do it and the people you are trying to impact, and what specific topic or what you will look at during outreaches. And then in March, we will pick based on people who have been attending and participating. 3 people will have to present in front of our guest speakers during the graduation of how they found the training, how it has impacted them, and also just the light to our guest speakers, what they plan to do with the information that they have acquired. So basically, that's the good news. You are finishing earlier than we had anticipated.
Okay, this is great. So for the graduation, is it going to be a virtual graduation or probably it's going to be a physical graduation? And if it's going to be physical, where exactly is it going to take place?
It won't be physical, it will be virtual, because we are trying to bring in other stakeholders that will be part of the meeting, like the Minister for Wapa Province and other MPs, as well as other people from the United Nations. So we'll definitely do a virtual meeting so as to accommodate everyone.
All right, even better. Thank you.
Okay. I think there's something in the chat box. So I don't know if we should wait 5 more minutes so I can start. Anyway, Chandrai. Yes. Just don't know if you have a challenge. Okay, just quick question with the rest of the class. Is it okay? Yeah, I think I can go ahead. So let me just start sharing the screen. Okay. Are you guys able to see what's on the screen? I don't know. I can't access right now the chat box. Innocent, can you just unmute yourself and just tell me what you're trying to communicate in the chat box?
I'm able to see what you are scrolling.
Oh, all right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Innocent, did you put in the chat box?
I was saying you can begin because I'm having another meeting at 21.
Yeah, exactly right. Perfect.
All right.
So we are now on lecture 3. We will be looking at lecture 3. We have basically exhausted the mental health hygiene from our previous lectures. We have talked about the myths, the taboos. We have talked about the need for women as well as men to be involved in issues relating to menstrual health hygiene. We have looked at the different sectors, the health sector, the schools, and the community, the role that they can play in ending period poverty, as well as community members. Yeah, and then we have also looked at how the community and different stakeholders can come in to support. So basically that's just a summary of our previous discussion. Now we are going to look at sanitary protection materials and disposal. So here we'll focus mostly on one. We'll look at comparing the sanitary protection materials that are available there. We'll look at their advantages, their disadvantages. Yeah, and then we'll now go into the production, distribution, and the costs of sanitary materials. And then we'll go in to look at the washing, drying, storage, and disposal of sanitary materials. So now let's look at we are comparing sanitary protection materials. You find that the choice of sanitary material, sanitary protection is very much of a personal decision based on, usually we consider what is culturally acceptable, and then you also consider the user preferences. Yeah. Okay, I'll just continue. Let me just leave the room and go somewhere where it's more quiet. Okay. So you find that when a person is considering which sanitary material to use, what they usually look at is what is usually focused on is if it's culturally acceptable, and the use of what is preferable. What does this person prefer? It's more of a personal choice. And you find that it's often influenced by a woman or girl's environment and access to funds, water supply, and affordable opinions or options that are available there. When somebody is considering which sanitary material or sanitary protection material to choose, they usually look at the fund, the water supply. For example, somebody who is in a desert, they might opt to go for something that is disposable and not something that is reusable, because you find that there is a lack of water supply, constant water supply. And if she goes for something that is reusable, it will become very hard for the person to keep it clean. Yeah. And other aspects might come in. You might even find that she develops an infection. And then you also look at how affordable something is. Women that usually, when they are choosing which sanitary protection material to use, they consider how affordable is it? Will I be able to afford a 20 kwacha every month? Or let's say there are some pads that even go up to 50 kwacha. To some, they might afford. To other people, it's affordable. To a young girl in the village, it might even be harder to just even afford that 20 kwacha every month. And she might opt to actually use clothes instead of the reusable pads that are normally available on the market. And when you are planning for a program that is focusing on aiming to empower or support women with sanitary materials, what is needed is for actually you to involve them in the planning of the planning discussions, the decisions about the materials and the products to be supported, so as to actually get their opinion on what will be mostly favorable for them, looking at their environment, looking at the supply of water, looking at their funds and their preferences, what would be affordable, what would be helpful, not just you going in to help them without actually having the time to assess. Even you as a menstrual health educator, before you go in to distribute certain sanitary pads, you might want to assess the situation. How is it? You might be teaching to young girls about menstrual health hygiene. Maybe in that class, there are people who can actually afford, and then there are people who can't afford. But then if you evenly distribute, you find that you might end up giving people that can afford and miss out on the people that can't actually afford. So if you are trying to support any woman as a menstrual health educator, you need to actually assess the situation, get to have a view or study how best you can help these people. And then you bring in the implementations based on how you have assessed the situation where you are offering or where you are helping, where you are lecturing. Yeah. So now I'm gonna just look at the advantages and disadvantages of the different sanitary protection materials that are available. Let's look at the toilet paper or tissue. You find that it's easily available in local markets. That is another advantage. That's the advantage that it has. It is easily available on local markets, but the disadvantage is that when it becomes wet, it easily falls apart. And it's very difficult to hold in place. That's why it might be a bad choice. And it might be too expensive, for the poorest users. Let me just admit Natasha to the meeting. You'll find that it might be too expensive for the poorest users. So for those joining in, we're actually just looking at the advantages and disadvantages of the different sanitary protection materials that are available. We move on to cotton wool. Why is it good? The advantage is that it has very good absorption properties. It's very easy to suck in a lot of blood, like even hold it in place, like not holding it in place as in, yeah, hold the blood without it leaking out. That is the good part about it. And it's easily available on local markets. But you find that the disadvantage is that if you put it on a pant, it will be very difficult to hold in place if you're using cotton wool. There's no supporters. And like when you compare the way pads are designed for women, you find that they have got wings, which helps, like when you close it in like an envelope, it helps to hold it in place. But with cotton wool, it doesn't have that provision. Hence, despite its good absorption properties, it's very difficult to hold in place. And another thing you find, it actually may be too expensive for the poorest users. It might be very hard for someone from Munchini village to afford cotton wool despite its good absorption properties. And another thing we can look at are the locally made reusable pads, the ones that now people are advocating for, like, let's teach people how to make their own reusable pads. You find that the advantage is that they are available locally. And for young people that you train in making reusable pads, it can become a source of income for them. They can start making them and selling it to other people. So income generation opportunities are also available if you make the locally made, if you tackle it from a perspective where you start teaching people how to make locally usable pads. Aside from the fact that they're available, they are locally available, you can also use it as an opportunity to generate income. And the cost effective, they are very cost effective as they are reusable, and they are more environmentally friendly than the disposable pads. But then the disadvantage is that The supply chain limitation may make it difficult to reach potential users. It might be hard. Yes, you might find that one person from a certain village in Mansa is able to make these pads, but then for it to be made available to other parts, it might be difficult. And then you find that users need somehow private. They need somewhere private where they can change, and they also need water supply and soap to wash and dry the pads. That's another thing that comes in that puts it at a disadvantage, despite it being a source of income, being locally available, environmentally friendly. For it to be properly used, we need also water supply, we need also soap and a place to dry them. And speaking of soap, you find that in the villages, it might be hard to even have access to soap. And then, like an instant where I talked of, in the desert where there's no water supply, this would be a very bad idea to actually propose to people, because there's no water supply, there's limited water supply. And hence you might promote an hygienic or menstrual health hygiene, menstrual management that are unhygienic. Then we move on to talk about tampons. When we talk of tampons, we're talking about the ones with or without applicators. The advantage is that they are convenient and comfortable to use. That's the advantage that tampons have. But then the disadvantage is that the cost is prohibited to many potential users. Tampons are quite expensive. For the men, I would challenge you, you might go should go in the section where sanitary materials are found and you compare the price for tampons and then compare them to the pads that are available there. You find that they are quite expensive. And then they generate a lot of waste to dispose of, and they are not environmentally friendly. And they might actually be cultural inappropriate. They may not be culturally appropriate, especially for young adolescents, as they need to be inserted into the vagina. The aspect of somebody maintaining their virginity, you do not want to use it to a tampon. Yes, that aspect comes in, so it might not be cultural appropriate. And then hygiene and availability of water and soap for hand washing are particularly important, as there is need to be inserted into the vagina. Also, water and soap comes in. Before you put it in, you need to make sure your hands are clean, so as not to put bacteria or germs inside the vagina, which can lead to itching and other infections. Then another one, menstrual cups. The advantage of using menstrual cups, in fact, I will send some pictures in the WhatsApp group of what I'm basically talking about. Menstrual cups is the advantage is that they are reusable, and they only need emptying, washing, and drying. But the disadvantage is that they may not be cultural appropriate for use, particularly for adolescent girls. Same as the tampons, you need to insert them into the vagina. And hygiene and availability of water and soap are particularly important for washing hands and menstrual cups, as they need to be inserted into the vagina. So all those things need to come in. So as a menstrual health educator, I talked about assessing the area where you are. You assess where you are and look at the option. Okay, these are the materials that are available these are the sanitary protection materials that are available. But then looking at the environment, which one would be more applicable to teach on or to tell people about, looking at the place that I've come to. And then you find that menstrual cups are actually pretty expensive. If you go on Kiku, you might find them at $250, one menstrual cup. But then the good part is they're usable, you just need one. But that's quite expensive for someone in a village or a poor community to just release that $250 to buy a menstrual cup. So now let's go to the production, distribution, and costs. You find that there is now an increasing amount of documentation for women's group and schools taking up, looking to start producing and marketing sanitary pads. At this moment, we are looking for more sustainable solutions than donating disposable sanitary pads in schools once in a month, which means we have to go back. You find that there are actually schools that have come up with alternatives where they teach community members how to make reusable pads using sewing machines, or teach school teachers as well as pupils, so that they can be able to make those sanitary protections available where they are. So these are some of the projects that you find schools and communities are now taking up. And those looking to establish a sanitary pad or pad production or group workshop should consider this. So when you are trying to establish a sanitary pad production group or workshop, what you need to consider, if you are saying, okay, after I've completed this course, what I want to do is actually a workshop on how to produce sanitary pads. So what do I need to put in mind? What do I need to think about when I'm planning for this workshop? I don't want to just talk about menstrual health hygiene. I also want to do a workshop on making sanitary pads. So what do I need to? So the thing is, you need usually, depending on the material and the production chosen, production can involve one, the full annual process. You can need sewing together fabric and absorbent materials. That now is making reusable pads. So you might need sewing together fabric and absorbent materials. What do I need apart from the fabric and absorbent materials? Then I'll need also a sewing machine to come in, or I will need, if not a sewing machine, I will need needles for the workshop, because I want them to be able to also hand make them from their various homes. So I will need, instead of a sewing machine, I'm just going to need needles, the fabric, as well as the absorbent materials for my workshop. Or it might be an automated manufacturing process using industrial machines, or the process of natural materials such as banana, water. Let me admit one person. Yeah. So those are the things when it comes to production, distribution, and costs that you need to consider. In fact, I hope somebody here is already planning out on what they will do for their outreach. So now we move on to the washing, drying, storage, and disposal of the sanitary materials. Washing, drying, and storage facilities affect the choice of sanitary protection. The ability to wash and dry clothes quickly with nobody else knowing, and having clothes that do not show stains as much over the longer term, are usually the most critical priorities for women and girls. So women and girls, when it comes to washing, what they want to do is actually find a way to actually wash and dry clothes without no one knowing what is going on. And aside from that, the ability to also wash clothes to the extent that it does not show blood stains. That has always been a goal as women when we are on our menstrual period, when we are washing our sanitary protection materials. What we want to focus on is we make sure that we wash in such a way that no one notices, to say, oh, today this person is having their period. No, we don't want everyone to know. We want to do it in a way that when we are done washing, there are no stains, or it could be on your clothes. You make sure there is no stain that is left behind. And if facilities are unavailable, women and girls may be uncomfortable drying reusable. Let me meet one person. And then if you find that if facilities are unavailable, women and girls may be uncomfortable drying reusable clothes outside in the sun. If facilities, there are no proper facilities for women to dry or put their sanitary protection that has been washed properly, it might be very uncomfortable drying usable clothes outside in the sun. They may also choose a darker colored cloth that does not show the stains. We are talking about when it comes to washing sanitary protection materials, women, that what they usually consider is the ability to wash clothes without no one noticing, as well as ability to wash the material without leaving stains. So which comes in, if your goal as a menstrual health educator is to actually put up a workshop that teaches women on how to make their own reusable sanitary materials, what you want to consider is a type of material that when you use, even if blood stains go on it, regardless of the color, it's able to be rinsed off without leaving any stains. Or if better still, you opt for dark colors to be used as fabrics when making the usable pads. Clothes that are not washed or dried properly can lead to infections or irritations. That's another thing that you need to put in, is the fact that if the clothes are not washed properly, it can actually bring about infections or even irritations to the skin. That also same applies to if they have not actually been washed or even dried properly. A wet cloth can be quite irritating to the skin and very uncomfortable. Now you come to washing and water supply availability, which is another key part that we usually consider when you are looking at the type of sanitary protection one has to choose or one can go for. Assessing a safe water supply can be a challenge, especially where clothes can be washed, discreet so that no one will see wastewater with blood in it. That is another thing which I feel like even when it comes to designing bathrooms, you want to design bathrooms in such a way that when water comes out, people cannot see. Today, if it's bathrooms in our village, those bathtubs that they make with glass, you find that the water, when it's coming out on the opposite side, people are able to see blood in it, and that is what we don't want to see. So for the men, we talked about the involvement of men. We can help us by designing bathrooms that are more discreet. And you find that because of that, women may prefer to use natural materials that can be disposed of rather than usable clothes that need washing. And as much as we are advocating for usable clothes, because women might be uncomfortable to pour out water and then people are passing, they're saying, oh, why is the water coming out red? And then another thing is that getting stains out of clothes is a difficult process. So soaking in cold water may be required before washing thoroughly. Again, requiring somewhere private. If you're going to soak something in cold water, you might need somewhere private to put, let's say, a bucket where you have soaked in the clothes with blood in it, so that other people don't see it. And this is a particular issue with light colored clothes. Although it is easier to judge the cleanness of those clothes than the darker ones. When you're using clothes of a brighter color, it's easy to see if it's clean than when you opt to use darker shades, let's say, or black. It's very difficult to know if you have properly washed or not. So moving on to the continuation, let's look at the risk of disease transmission from menstrual blood. This is where we're talking about the right way of handling menstrual blood, because it also brings about the risk of transmission. You can actually contact a disease from menstrual blood. So there is a risk of HIV/AIDS and hepatitis B transmission if a carer touches infected menstrual blood and has uncovered cuts or sores on their hands. We talked about menstrual health hygiene when we looked at women that are disabled or that are sick or challenged physically in any way, that they might need someone to actually look after them or to clean after them. So in this concept, I want you to picture such people. Imagine a carer. This person, maybe they are taking care of his already HIV and AIDS, and then touches the infected menstrual blood and has uncovered cuts or sores on their hands. They have sores. It's easy for them because of the openings that are on their hands to actually contact the disease. The HIV virus, the good part about it is it doesn't survive outside longer. It doesn't survive for long outside the body, and the risk of transmission will be small if the blood has dried. However, in the case for hepatitis B virus, it can survive for at least 7 days outside the body, and care should be taken in disposing of even dried blood. This one, even in dried blood, you can still get an infection. It can still be transmitted. Handling blood for menstrual cups. Now we bring it to the concept of menstrual cup. Where there is a larger volume of fresh blood may be theoretically pose a risk of transmission of hepatitis B or HIV to carers, to people actually taking care of ladies or women that are disabled or sick. So it would be advisable to avoid the use of menstrual cups when a carer is supporting a woman or girl with their menstrual health hygiene. Hence, then we are talking about, in this case, a menstrual cup would be a bad idea. But then we'd go for something that can be easily disposed of, something that won't require somebody actually getting in contact with the blood. However, in reality, the intimate nature of the insertion process makes it unlikely that a woman or girl requiring a care to support them with their menstrual cup needs would select this option. Like I said, this would be a bad choice. In this case, would opt for something else that does not requires the person taking care of them to be in contact with the blood. So let's look at the methods for drying clothes. What we are saying, in our culture, it's a taboo to actually go just wash your pad and then you just hang it there and everybody's seeing. It's the same as how they discourage us to hang pants in the open air where people can see. It's like you're exposing your dirty laundry, you're putting it out there. So, but then what are some of the best current methods known for drying your clothes? We are saying hanging in the open under the sun. But then in our culture, it's not okay to hang a pad outside there where people are seeing everything. Another method you can choose to dry your clothes is actually to iron with a hot charcoal iron or other iron. But then in a case where the sanitary pads as a plastic, it wouldn't be a good choice to actually, or any synthetic material. It wouldn't be a good choice to actually iron. It wouldn't be a good choice to actually iron the pads. The other methods known to be used where, although the effectiveness is unclear, another method, you will look at the different, what do people in India do? They tie the wet cloth under clothes while wearing them so that it can dry under the women's clothes, of which I don't see how. You basically tie a cloth that is already wet on your body, then you put another material on top of it. Then as you are moving around, it dries. I don't know how effective that is. Another thing, let's go to Bangladesh. In Pakistan, they hang or place a cloth on the ground outside under other clothes, which is okay. In Zambia, we can say you just get a pad, then you put a chitenge on top. But then underneath it, but it's still in the open sun, the sun will still be able to penetrate. You just put like a cloth so that people cannot see what is underneath. Or attach a cloth to one unturned basket to dry over the embers of fire. That is in Bangladesh, yeah. Or you pin the cloth with a safety pin inside a piece of clothing and hang the clothing on the line, which allows air to flow up to the pad. Basically the same thing I was talking about. In Zambia, we get a kadeng. They get a pin, they pin it to a cloth. So here it's just basically summarizes drying menstrual lags in the rain season. This is in Bangladesh. This story was adopted from the UNICEF Bangladesh, that is in 2008, where it reports of 35 Shipili, a promoter in whatever village, had great success in convincing all the members of her adolescents girl hygienic group to dry their menstrual clothes in the sun. However, once the rain season arrived, the girls returned to using damp clothes. There was just not enough sunlight each day to fully dry the rags. So she really devised a solution that she came up with. She encouraged all the girls to borrow their mother's kachan, which is a large cane basket used to carry vegetables from the field and to the market, and place them upside down over the cooking fires. After cooking, there is still a lot of heat in the embers and clays of oven, says Shipila. The girls now use clean and dry clothes all the time and find that itching no longer troubles them. You find that when women use clothes or sanitary protections that are wet, it promotes yeast infection in the vagina. So you find a child is itching in the vagina, they are constantly scratching. That's why we are advocating that they use sanitary protection materials that are actually clean and dry, so as to avoid any form of infection. So now we look at the last part, which is the disposing of sanitary products. Methods for ending disposal methods used for the disposal of sanitary clothes and other menstrual materials include: you can burn them, you can bury them, you can incinerate or burning. You find that in towns, when you're using the disposable pads, because they don't have Petra twins, they normally wash the pads, then dry them, then burn them. Or you can dispose into a regular waste management collection and disposal system, or you can dispose into a Petra twin, which is something that is, I think that is very convenient because you don't need to touch anything, just throw it in there. Or composting for biodegradable sanitary materials, for those materials that can be rotten or be turned into compost, just composting them. So these are some of the methods that can be used when it comes to disposing of sanitary products. And that is the end of lecture 3. So I don't know if anyone has any question for me. Let me just stop sharing my slide. So does anyone have any questions for me?
Send the slides.
Hello? Innocent?
You send in the slides.
I should what?
I'm asking, are you sending the slides in the group?
Yeah, like as always, at the end of the lecture, I'll send all the slides. I'll send the slides. So is there any questions for me? I'm now free to ask the class to see if they were paying attention. Okay, I don't know if anyone can just unmute themselves and just talk about anything interesting that they have learned through this lecture. You can just unmute yourself and just tell me what you have found interesting about today's lecture.
Hi Judith, Natasha here. Hey. I think today's lecture has been insightful. The fact that you have talked about, things from other parts of the world, also in different countries, it gives a better perspective, and also is eye-opening. I love the fact that all the sanitary options that you were talking about, you talked about advantages and disadvantages using these sanitary options. And clearly we can see that, you know, girls in rural areas are disadvantaged from whichever angle you look at it. And I know the government announced that they'll be distributing free sanitary napkins in school, which is a very good thing. But then again, it comes back to, you know, long-term solutions as opposed to you know, every month disposable sanitary napkins, because that will also become like very expensive than actually, you know, having sanitary napkins that also comes back. Sorry, hello. Yeah, it also comes back.
Yeah, we can get you.
You know, teaching these girls on these sanitary napkins that are reusable, that they can wash, and also being in a position to provide for them like decent sanitary, decent sanitation, and also, you know, clean private rooms where they can change and wash up and all of that. So I think today's lecture has been very insightful. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for that wonderful submission. So anyone else to unmute themselves? Men, why are you quiet?
No, not really, not really. You know, one of the things that I liked about the same today's lesson is the fact that I don't know why, but I never really thought of the blood that comes from that side as in containing stuff like HIV and AIDS and other viruses. I never really thought of that. So today's lecture has really given, you know, that explanation, which, you know, calls for everyone to be careful, especially those that are taking care of females, or yeah, with regards to that. It's one of the things that I liked. And then for the, you know, I when you were talking about giving the sanitary pads, the same ones, the reusable ones, I never really thought about the hygiene that needs to be, you know, to be put in place, and all those things. So it's been very educative, very insightful, and yeah, I enjoyed the lesson.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful submission. And bringing back to what Natasha talked about is the fact that there is also, aside from just giving, there is a lot that needs to be done in educating these young girls, especially even how to handle themselves. Yes, giving the sanitary pads is amazing, but then we need to go look for more sustainable solutions. We need to put in proper infrastructures that will be able to allow women to handle their menstrual periods in a private way and in a secure way, where they even feel comfortable and confident about what they are doing. The designs of many bathrooms, toilets right now does not accommodate for such. So we also need to push in for putting up proper infrastructures that will accommodate that also. So I don't know any other male or female to contribute before I start calling out names. I think we have about 7 minutes before the class ends. So anyone who is brave enough to just unmute their mic and just give their opinion about today's class. Ngosa, I know you joined late, but what's your take, Ngosa, on this?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I did join late, so I just like heard what was said towards the end. But I think overall, what I would say from what I've got is that there are really so many things that I'm learning, or I'm seeing that as women they have to think about that guys don't necessarily have to deal with. Like when you spoke about, for example, those who are living with bathrooms that are outside, and then when they need to wash or they need to bathe themselves, and then there's the water with the blood stains that comes outside, and how that is an issue as well, and how it can be sorted out in terms of washing as well. So all of those things, I would say, have just opened my eyes to some of the specific necessities that women have to go through and that they have to think about on a daily basis that we don't generally have to think about. And so I guess this is why it's important to have such programs and to learn. In this way, we can better support the women who are in our lives.
Oh yeah, that's true. So before we end the class, I'm just a clear indicator based on the participation. I don't know if I should post that in the group to motivate people, but we are going to get some participants that will be able to present during the graduation to the wonderful guests that we have lined up during the graduation. It will be a virtual meeting, but then we'll pick some of the participants to actually pitch what they have learned and what their plans are for this knowledge that they have acquired, how they found the class. Yeah, so we have powerful guests that we are planning to bring on board during the graduation, which I believe will take place early March, looking at how we have been moving in both of our classes for climate change as well as menstrual health hygiene. So for now, if there are no questions, I would say good night and bye-bye, and I'll definitely share the PowerPoint presentation for today, and I'll see you tomorrow in class. Thank you guys for coming in.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.